Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey all, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Just a couple of quick notes before we dive in. I want to share another review with you. This is from sgress2. And she or he or they say, I absolutely love this podcast and look forward to each week's episode. Each episode has been so helpful in supporting and guiding me as I do my best to practice peaceful parenting with my kiddo, with a really lovely smiley face emoji. I don't know if you can hear me smiling when I read these. If you are like sgress2 and you have found the podcast to be really helpful, please consider becoming a patron of the podcast. We would love to keep the podcast ad-free and keep all the episodes coming every week. It takes a lot of time and energy from my team and money to produce the podcast every week, and we would love to have your support. You can go to patreon.com/peacefulparenting. That's patreon.com/peacefulparenting and learn more about how to support the podcast and become a patron. Also, if you would like a little more support on your parenting journey and you find that you lose your cool or get annoyed and frustrated more often than you would like with your kids, I have a free e-course. It's called How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, and you can sign up for that at sararosensweet.com/yelling. Again, that's sararosensweet.com/yelling to sign up for my free e-course, all about how you can stay calm when kids are pushing your buttons, when you're low on resources and frustrated. It's really the biggest, most important place to start with peaceful parenting is how to regulate your own emotions. You've heard me talk about that's our first big idea of peaceful parenting. It's not that we don't get annoyed or frustrated or upset, but that we know how to calm ourselves when we do get upset. Again, you can sign up for the Stop Yelling course at sararosensweet.com/yelling, or you can support the show by going to patreon.com/peacefulparenting. All right, let's get into the episode. Today's episode is a coaching call with Michelle. Michelle is a mom of 2 girls, 11-year-old and 7-year-old. And it's an interesting one because the problem she thought she had wasn't actually what we ended up working on. Michelle is the mom of a really intense child. Her younger child, Q, is one of those kids that we call more or extra and really requires more energy and attention than her older child. And let's just dive in and you can see what I ended up coaching her on wasn't exactly what she thought she needed help with. So this is a real interesting one for anyone who has a child who is more or extra, or for anyone who has more than one child and has some sibling rivalry issues crop up, maybe because of one child needing more attention and energy than the other one does. So let's dive in and be sure to stick around till the end where you hear how things worked out for Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I am mom to 2 girls. M is 11, and Q is 7, almost 8.
Okay, how can I support you today?
So I have kind of been slowly making the transition to peaceful parenting. It's been a journey for a little while now, and mostly because of our younger daughter, Q. She has a lot of big feelings and needs a lot of help dealing with them, and kind of needed some time for us to realize that. And so right now, a lot of issues are coming up between the 2 girls, especially because I want to help her kind of understanding Q, and that we're kind of switching gears a little bit in how we do things, or at least I am more so. My husband isn't quite as on board with the peaceful parenting. So I'm just finding a lot of things are coming up with M, and finding things maybe not so fair, and just having trouble just kind of being angry with her sister for things that happen when the big feelings come up.
Can you give me an example? Or
a lot of name calling that goes on, and she'll, if she'll do things like we kind of say like, oh, you're poking the bear kind of thing when Q gets upset. Or she'll do things, especially like mornings can sometimes be tough getting out the door. She'll do something like she'll say something to her sister that she knows will set her off.
Sorry, just I'm confused. M will poke the bear or Q will poke the bear?
M will poke the bear. So
Okay.
Q is the one who is kind of quick to get upset, and M will
Right.
sometimes, either if Q is getting upset, she'll come in and say something that, maybe isn't the nicest thing to say, or she'll go up and just like bop her on the head or bop her on the bottom, and knowing that that's something that she doesn't like.
So it's not just that M is upset about the amount of attention and energy that Q takes because she's sort of extra and has big feelings, but that there's also some sibling rivalry going on because it sounds like M is actually sort of causing some of those big reactions.
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah. So I mean that's something that we could talk about. It depends on where you want to go here. If you want to talk more about siblings and helping to reduce some of that sibling rivalry that's causing M to basically say like, who's, I'm going to do this thing, and whose side are you going to come down on? Are you going to be on my side or are you going to be on her side? Right? Like that's the crux of it. You had written to me that since you've transitioned to peaceful parenting, M is often wondering why Q isn't getting a punishment or a consequence, right? So
Yes.
it could be that, M is sort of starting these things to get you to choose her, right? She wants to and I don't think it's malicious or even very conscious, but she's sort of getting Q to act out, hoping that Q will get a consequence, and then M will feel a lot of that she's the good one and loved by you. Does that sound kind of what's going on?
I think so sometimes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then other times, I imagine Q just has big feelings of her own, nothing to do with M, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
So where do you want to go here? Do you want to talk about the sibling dynamic, or, you had mentioned that supporting Q is also something that you're interested in getting some support around.
Yeah, I feel like one of the biggest things that I have trouble with now is when they really are getting irritated with each other and just trying to de-escalate it enough so that we can talk about the problem. And then sometimes, I guess it's kind of twofold, because sometimes M pushes back when I say, well, let's just, let's try and calm down and then we can talk about it. And she says, well, it takes too long to talk about it. I just want to go on and do my thing. Like, we don't need to talk about it. And so that, I think that part is helping to get that de-escalation, and then just, I guess, other ways to help her see that talking about it does help. It's something that we can do, and it's not this big bad thing that needs to take
Right.
all our time.
Well, so give me some examples of some conflicts that have happened and that she doesn't want to talk about it.
Maybe if they both want to watch something, but something different, and they're having trouble coming up with agreeing on something to watch on a streaming service. We just have streaming services. I'm trying to think, that's a big one, is in deciding things to do, or if, yeah, a lot of it has to do with one of them wants to do one thing, one of them wants to do the other thing, but they maybe want to play together, but they just can't seem to agree, and then they just start arguing and fighting, and sometimes that gets quite aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so two things come to mind. One is that you might have a system in place for one of my former clients introduced me to this, the idea of kid of the day, where you have, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, one of your girls is kid of the day, and then Monday or Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, the other kid is kid of the day. I'm trying to do, each of them has a weekend day, and then maybe Monday is parents' choice. So, for deciding what to play, that might not work very well. But for example, deciding, what show to watch or something like that, that might work. So whoever's kid of the day, they get to choose. Or sometimes there's like a favorite chair that everybody always wants to sit in. So if you're kid of the day, you get to sit in the favorite chair or whatever. So that's something that you might want to talk over with your husband and your kids about instituting that, because that could take some of the either or things off of the table. And then, you have to support the person who's not kid of the day and empathize with them. Oh, it's so hard. You wish you were kid of the day today and you could choose what we're going to watch on Netflix. Guess what? Tomorrow you're going to be kid of the day and you'll get to choose tomorrow. So that kind of thing.
I could see that. Yeah. I could see that really buying into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something you might want to try for some of those just straightforward your way or my way in terms of like, logistics around your house. I was going to say who gets to sit in the front seat because when I was a kid, we still got to sit in the front seat, but the kids today don't really get to sit in the front seat, I guess. Okay, so that's one level, and then the other level, it sounds like they need some help around conflict negotiation or conflict resolution. What typically happens now? I mean, you say that you try to get them to talk about it, and M doesn't want to talk about it, but how do things get resolved or not resolved right now? Say they want to play together, but they want to play different things. What would typically happen?
Lately, it's been M kind of putting Q off for a bit. So Q might storm off in that case and be really upset and then not want to play, and it takes a while to get her engaged again.
And who's doing the engaging?
Q would come up and say, M, I want to play, let's play. And M's like, no, I'm reading. So we've been trying to talk to her about, just instead of just saying no, like, giving a reason or giving a time frame, which she is getting better at doing.
Okay.
But if she doesn't, then there can be like kind of yelling and sometimes hitting to get like Q will get upset and then just go over and start saying, play with me and hitting and really just basically trying to like bug her into playing with her at that moment.
Right. And what would you or your partner be like? Would this be when you weren't around, or are you there? Or what's going on? Where are you at if this is happening?
Usually they're in another room, and so then if I hear things kind of escalating, then I'll go in and try and say like, whoa, there's no hitting, and getting people just to calm it down. My husband will sometimes come in and just say like, there's no hitting and there's going to be consequences.
He's not on the train yet, it sounds like.
So
that's okay. So when you go in, it's great. The whoa, whoa, whoa. I hear two girls who are having a problem here. Everybody, I'm here to help. That's what I would say. I'm here to help.
Okay.
And then I would get, so what you want to think of yourself is the communication enabler, right? You're not going to solve the problem. And I don't even know if I would say no hitting because they're 7 and 11. They already know that hitting's not allowed. So saying that 25 more times over the next 2 weeks isn't going to help anything. I would just really focus on the distress that, especially it sounds like Q, but it could be either of them, it sounds like, is having, depending on the situation. And I would just say, everybody sounds so upset. I'm here to help. So what you want to try to do is get, in the example that you gave, it's really not M that you need to talk to because she's just reading a book and her sister is bugging her. So I would, in this case, I would say, Q, what's up? She said, I want to play with M and she won't play with me. She said she would and now she's just reading a book. And then you want to, does that sound like what she might say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you want to empathize because you said originally a few minutes ago, you said, I really want to know how to de-escalate the situations. Empathy and making somebody feel understood is the only thing that ever makes anyone want to calm down, is if they feel understood. So no hitting isn't really going to make someone feel understood. The hitting is a fear and dysregulation response. Like she's overwhelmed by her own big feelings and she's gone into fight, flight, or freeze. We can get overwhelmed and it feels like an emergency to our nervous system. And so just our own big feelings can feel like a threat and can send us into that fight, flight, or freeze. So you want to remember, okay, she's dysregulated. I'm going to come in with my calm. I'm here to help. Empathize. Oh, you wanted to play with your sister and she's reading. Oh, how disappointing. And, it's not, I'm using words right now. Words are one way to empathize, but it's more about how we're feeling inside than it is about the words that we say. So really try and put yourself into Q's shoes of that, loving to play with her sister. It's frustrating. It's not what she expected. She thought her sister was going to play with her. She's got a little bit of trouble with self-regulation. Her feelings are so big and her, maybe her brain development hasn't caught up yet to her big feelings. And so just trying to really put yourself into her shoes and find that empathy. And then if words help for her, or maybe it's just a hand on the back or, let me give you a hug, we can work this out. So just coming in with that calming, soothing presence and empathizing is the best way you can de-escalate a situation.
Yes, sometimes it's the calming thoughts are there, but maybe the rest of me isn't necessarily fully on board there
Well,
sometimes.
I think it's really tough, especially when you have a kid who's so, I'm going to say dramatic for lack of a better word, because it's real. She's not trying to be difficult. But when you have a kid who has such big reactions and such big feelings, it can be exhausting. And, probably several times a day, you're called to help Q with her big feelings.
Yes,
So, yeah, it
it's
can be totally exhausting. The the
yeah,
the only thing though that's going to help her with those big feelings is if you consistently respond to her with empathy and compassion and calm. Like that's what's over time going to help wire her brain in the direction of I can handle these big feelings. They're not an emergency because my mom is responding to me as if it's not an emergency.
that's fair. Yeah. So I'm just thinking of other situations when maybe it kind of came, like I thought of it more now with M, especially I would say when she is feeling stressed, her stress may come out in kind of attacking her sister, whether her sister has asked her to play and she just doesn't feel like it, or if she is trying to do something else, her sister just happens to be nearby, then sometimes, well, let's say if her sister's asked her to play and she doesn't want to, but then it isn't just no, like, I don't want to play. It's like, you're, a little rat and I don't want to play with you and stop bothering me. And then she might continue and name call
Mm-hmm.
um, just to get her to leave or just to vent. I think she's probably feeling other things, but she's just, using Quinn as her vent.
Yeah. So I think you can first start by empathizing with M. Like, wow, you must be feeling really stressed and annoyed or whatever. I mean, maybe she's not recognizing it as stress that, from other things. So maybe you just say something like, you must be feeling super annoyed to be shouting at your sister like that at the same time. So not but, because but erases the empathy that you've just given. So you must be super annoyed to be shouting at your sister like that. At the same time, we really try not to shout at people in our family, or we try not to call names to people in our family. And I'm saying try not to rather than don't, because if you say we don't do this in our family and she's just done it, that means she's not in the family, right? So it's like an isolation sort of
Yeah,
feeling. So we really try to only use kind words even when we're upset, or we try not to shout at people when we're upset. How can I help you? Would you like a hug? I don't know. What do you think M might respond to?
that's a tough question. Sometimes a hug, and sometimes she definitely doesn't want that physical contact, like because she's just, I think, too kind of worked up in that
Mm-hmm.
moment.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe
and
ask her when she's not, when she's not upset. Ask
mm-hmm.
her what are some things that you might be able to do to help her when she is feeling upset.
Okay.
There's a really good, I'm going to link to this in the show notes and I will also send it to you, but there's a really good checklist by a colleague of mine named Janine Halloran. It's called Coping Skills for Kids. And it's
Mm.
really a big, long checklist of different categories and different ideas of things that kids can try to do when they're feeling upset to help themselves calm down. So I will send that to you and I'll link it for people. But this is something that you go over with your child or go over with M and say, like, listen, I found this great, resource of different things that you might want to try to help you calm down when you're feeling upset. Would you like to put together a little list of your own? Like, let's look at these together. Maybe some of them you already do. Let's look at this together and see if there are a few things that we might be able to try. So that's something that's really great skill teaching, as well as in the moment, something that you can use. The one thing I would be really careful about is a lot of times parents try to go straight to self-regulation strategies without
Mm.
empathizing and soothing. And so picture if you were really upset about something and your husband said, like, okay, Michelle, just take some deep breaths, without having acknowledged what you were upset about, or said, oh, gee, I can see why you're really upset about this. And, anyone would be upset about this. It's the empathy and compassion that makes you want to use the self-regulation strategies that you know. So you can't skip straight to the self-regulation strategies, or it just makes people more upset. So you have to really focus on what I said first, which was you must be feeling really annoyed to yell at your sister like that. And then you might even stick with that for a few minutes before you even go into, at the same time, we try not to yell at people. How can I help you? But really just, you'll have to judge in the moment when she might be ready for some help, but really just focusing on, wow, you must be having a bad day. I can see that you're really having a hard time right now or something. So that empathy and compassion first, and then offering either yourself as how can I help, or do you want to try one of the let's go over here and take a break? Do you want to try one of the things on your list that we talked about?
Any suggestions, I guess, for if she seems kind of really stuck in that, just in the name calling, or just really upset and kind of stuck in that part of it, and not being able to move past?
Yeah, I think that you have a case of what my mentor, Dr. Laura, calls chip on the shoulder. That not you, but that M has a chip on her shoulder about Q. It sounds like Q has been a fairly intense kid who's needed a lot of time and energy from you and her dad in terms of like her big feelings and, her needs, which is totally normal for one child to have bigger needs than the other. It can be hard for the child that's a little bit more easygoing and doesn't need quite as much from you. And so I think the only way to address when she won't let it go in the moment is to really keep working on the background. So are you
Okay.
getting the one-on-one time with M, you and your partner, and Q for that matter? Like, is there any time that you get alone time with each girl?
She likes to read in the evening, so we do that. It hasn't been as consistent lately. That is one big one. And then, yeah, I would say it's probably not as consistent as it could be. And Q is getting some one-on-one time as well. We have also been walking to school. We've started that this year, which is good for us.
I would, after this call, I would really think about where you can find some more one-on-one time with each girl. I mean,
Okay.
I say each girl, it sounds like M might be craving it a little bit more because she's really the one that's showing a little bit more rivalry in terms of that chip on her shoulder about her sister, but both of them need it. So I would think about, are there, our gold standard is daily time, one-on-one time. However, that's not practical for a lot of families. So I would think about, are there times on the weekend where you can get, maybe you and your husband can trade off the girls for an hour each of them an hour on the Saturday or Sunday or something like that, where you get some one-on-one time. You don't have to do anything fancy like go to the aquarium or, a movie or something like that, but just go, for a bike ride or play with them in the park or play in their room or just something simple. I'm all yours for the next hour. What would you like to do? Because I think that needling at Q that you've described, the, letting her stress out at her sister, like this is all signs of that deeper rivalry, that chip on her shoulder about her sister being the thing that makes her life harder, right? And that's all about, that stems from, do my parents love me as much as they love her? Why did they have her in the first place? Why did they have to replace me? Aren't I good enough? Won't my needs, are my needs going to get met? That whole, all of the classic things that sibling rivalry comes from.
Yeah, and she does, yeah, express
Yeah.
those feelings. Like she will actually, say like, why?
Why does she
Sometimes, why is
exist?
she here? Why can't we? Why
Yeah.
can't we send her back?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not surprised. That's where the symptoms come from that you've described, right? The symptoms are the needling and the, offloading of stress on her sister and the fighting, and it comes from those fears, right? So that's one thing, is that the connection, one-on-one time during the week. If you
Okay.
can't find that connection time, or reading is great, but if make little efforts for those, what we call the micro moments of connection, the wink, the hug, the squeeze when you walk by, smile on your face when you see her, really trying to up your connection in any way that you can. That'll also help her to feel like she's got you, that she's no one could replace her, because that's the fear, right? Is that you love her sister more. So the other big ideas that we have with sibling rivalry are intervening in a fight in a neutral way. So that's sort of what I was saying before. You're the communication enabler. You're not coming in with the solution, but you're having them speak to each other. I've got a free download for the sibling best practices, which I'll send you, that you can also review before we speak next time. And for anyone else, I'll link that in the show notes. But that'll go over in a little bit more detail than we have time for today about how to intervene in that neutral way. But the big idea is, you're not going in to make the solutions. You're helping them speak to each other, after they've calmed down because you've empathized and, been the sort of the calm anchor. So that's sort of the second big idea. The third big idea is sharing and property rules. Basically that, and in this case, I was thinking they don't have to play together is one of the big ideas. If M doesn't want to play with Q, it's hard for Q, but she doesn't have to play with her sister if she doesn't want to. Just like they don't have to share their, the toys that belong just to them. They don't have to share. And that, again, that I go over that in the siblings best practices guide that I'll send you. And then what I want to focus though is on the fourth idea, which is giving M an outlet to talk about how she feels. And you said she already does talk about it some, which is really good. So those are the two things I think that the first idea in terms of the one-on-one time, and then the fourth idea of giving her, listening empathetically to her when she talks about how she wishes her sister was never born and how you love her more, and just giving her an option of, obviously when you're not around Q, but giving her the opportunity to be heard. Because when those feelings can come to the surface, that's when they start to dissipate. So you might hear some horrible things like, I wish she was never born, but your job is just to listen with empathy, just to listen like, it is so hard to be a big sister, isn't it? I hear you. This has been so hard for you. And your mind is probably going to be going, but you love to play together so much sometimes. But that's not the time to say it. It's not the time to talk about what a great big sister she is. It's only to listen and let her say anything that comes out and tell her that you understand and that all her feelings are okay with you. And that's when those feelings will start to be processed and they'll start to dissipate when she can be heard.
Okay. I think those are doable things that we can try.
Good. It's interesting because when you wrote to me, it seemed like you were wanting more help with Q and her big feelings, but it sounds like the pain point has been more that having one intense child that's caused some rifts in the sibling dynamic is more the issue than her intensity is itself.
Yes, I think that's something that I think we're getting a better handle on Q. It still can be very challenging certain days. But yeah, trying not to let M kind of get lost in the shuffle, and helping her see the merits of this new approach. And that.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because you mentioned that she does, why aren't you giving her a consequence, or why isn't she in trouble? What do you typically say when M is wrangling for a punishment for Q?
I think I probably have said something to the effect of, that I'm doing things a little bit differently, and that I've learned, some new ways of doing things. And sometimes trying to just say, she just is having big feelings and not, and it's hard. And just empathy. Sometimes I just say, it's hard,
Good.
Q can be hard sometimes, or it can be hard with her.
Good. Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. Definitely empathize with M about how, it is hard to having a little sister who takes so much time and energy and has such big feelings that is really hard for her. So fantastic that you're empathizing. And then I think I would also say, a lot of people think that you need to make someone feel bad to teach them something. And I used to think that too. I used to think that we needed to make you and your sister feel bad by giving you a consequence to teach you a different way of being. But you know what I realize now? I realize that people actually learn better when we don't try to make them feel bad, and that you don't need anyone to make you feel bad to teach you something. And so that's what I would sort of focus on. And I would ask her, like, if you make a mistake and your teacher, say you made a mistake at school and your teacher yelled at you and made you stay in for recess, do you think that would help you do better next time? And see what she says. I mean, you can have a conversation with her about the sort of the big idea behind peaceful parenting. And that, I think I would talk about, I believe in the goodness of people, and that we don't need to make people feel bad that they want to do things, they want to be good. And your sister does want to be good. She just can't manage sometimes. Just like when you were little, you had a hard time sometimes, even though you were trying.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and she might say, well, I would be better at school if I don't want to get in trouble. And then I think I would say, but how would that make you feel about your teacher, or if one of your friends was trying to make you feel bad, to give them something or do something. So I'm just trying to troubleshoot what a smart 11-year-old might say. Because she might say, oh, I would be good if my, teacher threatened me. But I think you could probe a little bit deeper and say, but, how would that make you feel about your teacher and about school? And do you think that's the best way to teach people? So just try to appeal to her, her own sensitivity.
She's definitely tuned into that, so I think it would make sense. She might throw a few arguments, but
Yeah. I think you can probably meet them with sort of like, I believe that it's always better to try and be kind and support people, and rather than try and make anyone feel bad. And
yeah,
maybe, I don't know if she's gotten many consequences over her life, but she might also be feeling like it's not fair that, I was getting consequences until I was 10, and, she's not getting consequences. And so you might want to add in a little, I'm really sorry for the times that I gave you consequences when you were littler, and I wish I knew then what I know now. And I'm sorry if I've ever, made you feel bad by giving you a consequence. Because maybe that's what it's about too, now that I think about it, that she feels like resentful that, when she was 7 and she did the same thing, maybe she would have gotten a consequence.
yeah, I'm sure that probably does play in.
Mm-hmm. So I think just I'm sorry for that I didn't know this earlier, and we're moving on in the way that we know now. And I trying to think, you don't want to really like ask her to forgive you or anything like that, but I think you could just say, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel bad with consequences. I wish I knew
Okay,
differently then.
that sounds good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you've got a lot to work on.
Yes.
Hopefully not too much.
No, I think we can work on it.
Yeah, and I do think it's the sibling dynamic more than it's Q herself being extra or more, like I like to call those kids who have big feelings or sensitive, and that the repercussions or fallout that's come from
Mm.
M feeling like Q is, causing problems for her, the chip on the shoulder, just that typical sibling stuff that probably comes even if you don't have a more challenging sibling, but it's extra when you do have a more challenging sibling. So I think working on some of that sibling stuff will help a lot.
Yeah, we will definitely try that.
All right. Any last questions before we sign off until our check-in?
No, I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you in a few weeks, and we'll see how things went.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, Michelle. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi.
How have things been? It's been a month since I talked to you. How have things been with M and Q?
It's kind of, I feel like lately it's always an up and down a little bit. I've been trying to focus on just a couple of things that we talked about.
Awesome.
And yeah, I think it's just a slow kind of progress and sorting things out.
Yeah, it took you 7 years to get here, and it won't take 7 years to have things feel better. But you're right, it does take time to work on that chip on the shoulder and old patterns for sure. So what did you decide to focus on that we talked about? What have you tried?
Focusing as best I can on the special time. And so it's been kind of a combination of the time when we have like a longer period of time that we can do, like on a weekend. There's been a couple evenings like playing a game or something that M has asked to do. Sometimes after Q goes to bed, that's a good time because then it's quiet and we can have just a quiet, time together. And then when that's not always possible, then just trying to do like the little kind of throughout the day, like, a little
The
hug or
delighting,
whatever.
yeah, those little
Yeah.
micro moments of connection.
Yeah. The micro moments. So I
Yeah,
feel like,
nice.
yeah, that's coming along. Uh,
Do you think it's been making a difference?
I think a little bit. I think we still need more time and really to work on how she's feeling just towards her sister. I think it goes pretty deep. So
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's one thing that we sort of realized when we first talked, is that has these sort of stored up resentments of having a sister who needs so much from you, and that's hard. That's hard for her.
yeah, yeah. I think Although I am thinking of kind of a situation last week we had where M was probably in a better place to deal with it, but Q made her miss one of her activities.
Mm.
She was having some big feelings and we were struggling to get out the door, and it didn't work out.
Oh, no.
But I was really impressed with, I will admit, I was having a very hard time with it, and just with trying to be fair to M, and lots of stuff just coming up for me with the situation. But she came in and she was upset, and there were a few names, called, but she just went and got out the stuff and she started baking.
Cool.
So I don't know if that's related to what we did, but I was really impressed with the way that she was like, I know this is really bugging me and I just need to do something
Something
to,
nice for herself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
So,
that's an awesome skill to have in terms of like figuring out how to meet your own needs. And when you're disappointed, helping yourself feel better. Whether or not it has to do with the work that you've been doing, we don't know. But it sounds like she was maybe not quite as resentful of Q as she might have been earlier.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
great.
yeah, I thought that was really nice. And especially when I was struggling, I thought that was great for her to be able to do.
That is good. Another thing we talked about was really focusing on trying to de escalate each girl by empathizing and acknowledging their feelings when they were having a fight. Were you able to try that at all?
I have tried, yes, I would say probably with mixed results and sometimes better than others. But I really did try to focus. That was the other thing I was going to say I've been trying to work on, is just focusing really on the empathy and trying not to go in and say, we don't hit or we don't do this, like really trying, I physically get in the middle of them and then try to say, yeah, I know it's you, it sounds like you really want to do this and you really want to do this, like can we figure out how to do that together, or maybe not.
Yeah, or something that works for everyone, some sort of solution.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
And
So
and like anything, it's going to take longer than a month for you to really get a lot, get big results, I think, and just moving and just be patient with it and recognize that you're moving in a new direction, you're moving in the right direction, and just don't give up. Just keep trying all of these things. As I said, Q was born 7 years ago, almost 8, I think. It's taken you this long to get to this point. It will take time to get out of it.
yeah,
You are seeing some sort of little glimmers, though, of hope.
I think so. I think, yeah, depending on, I think, how M's day has gone before, if she needs to get rid of some stuff, then it might be directed at
Yeah,
Q. But she seems a little more willing to at least try to work together. Or they just both kind of say, I'm just going to go and do this for a bit, and I'm going to go and do this for a bit, and then we try and come back later. Or I might go and talk with one of them.
good. Yeah, we
Um,
talked about maybe giving Em some more coping skills or some self-regulation skills that she can try and that to remember the place for that is after empathizing and acknowledging. And I realized just before we got on the call that I meant to send you the coping skills resource and I didn't. I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. But did you have a chance to look that up on your own or did you try to use some things?
I haven't looked at it yet. I will definitely look at that. I think the other thing that I've been trying to do is really just sit with her and listen.
Nice.
So I've kind of tried focusing on those things, and then,
Fantastic.
yeah, and then coming to the solutions, because we have tried some things in the past. So it's not that she doesn't have any ideas.
Good. So she already has some ideas for those coping skills or self-regulation that you can go to after you've listened.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think it'll be more of a, let's go through and really figure out which ones resonate more with her and really make more sense that she wants to really try out, do a little more test run on it.
good. Yeah, and since she's 11, she's a little bit more well-developed brain, prefrontal cortex thinking brain that she can start to strategize even when she's upset. That's starting to be more possible. The older kids get, the more they're able to use their thinking brain while they're upset. And I love that you've been listening because that's another thing we talked about too last time was to try and help melt away that chip on the shoulder, just really listening to her feelings about Q. And so you've been actively trying to increase that amount of time as well?
Yes. That's something, I think, kind of those three things. Yeah. And
Great.
it's hard.
Yeah.
That one's hard sometimes, but yeah, I'm
It is
trying to.
hard. I know sometimes kids can say things that feel like a bit of a knife, like wish she was never born, or things like that can feel really hard. And I think we just remember that when we're upset, we all say things, or when we're in the heat of the moment, we all say things we don't really mean. But just to be able to hear the feeling that's driving those sort of dramatic words is important for you to be able. It sounds like you're doing that, so that's great.
We'll keep working on that one for
Good.
sure.
Well, was there anything that you felt like you needed more clarification or tweaking on that we talked about before I let you go?
I think sometimes still the biggest struggle I have is just like when first coming in to the interaction with them to try to really, it just feels like no one's listening sometimes. Like I'm trying to be calm and trying to get to the empathy, but I'm in the middle and there's still a big need to get at the other
Right.
sibling.
Right. So what have you tried so far, and have you found anything that works that we can expand on?
Mostly trying to get there a little earlier before things get really heated,
Great.
which sometimes works and sometimes is tricky because you can go kind of quick. And the other one is really trying to get like physically between them.
Mm-hmm. So kind of like, whoa, 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 like if you can see me, but the listeners can't, like really putting your arms up and trying to get some physical space in between them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
You also might think of, and this doesn't always work, but it's something that you can build on, having like a code word that you talk about when maybe you can come up with something when they're calm. Like let's think of a emergency code word, or something else that I've recommended to families that I think works sometimes is a pause button. So you can do like a code word or a pause button where when you hear this word, or when we call a pause, and anyone can call a pause in the family, like, think of like your,
Mm.
TV remote control, like pausing the action, and maybe even just practicing that when, I promise we will get back to whatever it is that's upsetting you both. We just need to take a pause. And so why don't we have this, maybe a silly code word or something, or the pause button. So that's something you could try.
I like that. I feel like we could all use that.
Yeah, the pause button. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really like that.
Maybe you could even make like a cardboard remote control or something with a big red pause button on it. You can press it when it's time for a pause.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
And I think stressing that, don't worry, we'll get back to whatever it was. We will come back to it. We just need to pause and regroup and, bring down the energy level a little bit before we can get back to it.
Yeah, that one I can see being helpful for sure. And I think the visual would be really great.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. We'll try it, and I hope it helps, and I hope that things can continue to see a little bit of forward momentum, and do keep me posted how things go.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, for coming on. I know you're not alone, and a lot of parents have very, very similar challenges to where you are. So I know you've helped a lot of people today. So thank you. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.